Hey guys, it's Go Do Your Own Research. I hope everyone's doing really good. Welcome to my channel. And hello to MJ Guilty Child Predator. Oh, good, more scams from the Wacko Jacko camp are about to get exposed again. Yes, indeed. So tonight I wanted to go back to, I know this is the third live stream I've done about this week. I want to go back to the lawsuit, the Cascio lawsuit, because I went through it on the 8th of June. It's now the 12th of June. It's my daughter's birthday today, so it kind of feels a little bit like it's my birthday when it's her birthday. Feels like yesterday I became a mum. No, I'm joking. There's been a lot of updates on the docket since I last went over it. And I actually can't believe that no one else is covering this case, to be honest with you, because there's just so much going on. There's so much being revealed. But then I was thinking about it and I'm like, yeah, well, the reason why they're probably not covering it is because the Michael Jackson side is not putting out press releases about it. It's not going on TMZ. They're not coming out publicly and speaking out about it. They're not feeding the content machine. And if anyone was to, they're going to start seeing that a lot of these myths that have been surrounding Michael Jackson are going to start unraveling, because that's what I'm seeing. And I'm like, this whole thing is wild. Like, I literally cannot believe that this fake album has come up in the court documents, because I've literally had people in the comments talking about that in the beginning saying, I can't trust the Cascios because they put out that fake album. Anyway, also, I quickly want to say that I'm sorry I'm not on the camera tonight. Quick disclaimer, I really wanted to be, but I'm using this streaming service, Restream, and it's so, I don't know why it's so hard to navigate. So I've used up my monthly limit on my other streaming service, StreamYard, and I really need another streaming service. I was trying to use OBS earlier, but I'm not really sure how to work it. So if anyone knows anything about streaming services, please let me know. So I have been trying for ages today to try and fix the arrangement on the screen here so that I can be like small down the bottom, because I've done it before with this program, but they've changed everything, and then have the documents showing full screen so you can all see them. But it just will not let me do that, and it will not let me put my camera on. So I'm like, great. I'm just going to try and crack on. So what I may do is, if I show the whole screen, can you still hear me? Let me know if you can still hear me. If you can't, then I'll have to come back. I'm not sure about Michael Jackson, about being glad he had an overdose. I feel like, I don't know, I just think that, you know, he was addicted to drugs for so long. Everyone was trying to get him off the drugs. Everyone for years and years and years was saying, get off the drugs, go back to work, put an album out, do some more performing. And he just didn't want to hear it. But if he had done, he might have actually faced up to the consequences of what he'd done to people. He could have ended up in a better place. I don't know. Thank you very much. You can hear me. Great. Okay, so I'll probably leave it like that then, and we'll have the chat there at the side. Happy birthday to your daughter. Does she hate child predators? She thinks I'm a little bit obsessed with Michael Jackson. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sort of like she's really supportive of me doing my channel, because I had this channel for like over a year before I even told her that I did it. But she doesn't really want to hear too much about it. But yeah, she's gone out to meet her friends, so we're all good. Right. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. Okay, so I went through the whole lawsuit on the 8th of June, yeah. So that was here. So I was up to here. And I read all these out on the live stream on the 8th of June. And then I think I read the main document from the Michael Jackson side, yeah, because I'm reading both sides here, because this is what I'm saying. Like, someone is lying in these documents, because there's two conflicting stories going on, and it's going to have to come out. It's going to have to get to a point where someone's going to be sussed out. Now you can see how much has been updated literally in the last couple of days. So we've got so what they're arguing over is this enforced arbitration ruling, which I thought was meant to be on the 11th, but they're still fighting over it. But then the other thing that I noticed was that in the last reading I did, the last live stream of the documents, this declaration of Bryan Freedman and Martin Singer, I couldn't see them, I couldn't access them, but they've now been downloaded. So I obviously read the declaration of Bryan Freedman that was referenced in one of the arguments they were having. And so we can now see what Bryan Freedman actually said. And this is what I'm saying, like, his story is completely different to what the Cascios are saying, and it just doesn't add up, in my opinion. So he said, I'm an attorney admitted to practice before this court and all of the courts of the state of California. And I also happen to know that Bryan Freedman has a history of not being honest. He has a history of going out to the press and telling them that everything has gone great for their client and that he has got them a victory, when behind the scenes he's made their client accept a really bad settlement. Or in the case of FKA Twigs, for example, who he was representing, the whole suit got dismissed. She didn't get anything. But he only tells the press, like TMZ, he's best buddies with Mark Garagos, so he goes on there, he gets to have his say. He goes on, Megyn Kelly is another one of his very good friends, and he tells his side of the story, and people believe it. But yeah, behind the scenes is a different story. So he was representing this guy called Travis Flores against Justin Baldoni. This was before he represented Justin Baldoni. And he got a settlement for Travis Flores, yeah? Travis Flores was used by Justin Baldoni in a TV series called My Last Days. He had a terminal illness called cystic fibrosis, and he had written a script for a film that he wanted to put out. Justin Baldoni then made a film. It was called 5 Foot Apart or something. Justin Baldoni then put out his first feature film with a very similar sounding title and a very similar story and script. So Travis Flores sued him because he had let Justin Baldoni read his script, and he sued him and said, you've stolen my script. And Bryan Freedman represented him, and he got a settlement. He passed away. This was before the whole drama with It Ends With Us happened. And now Travis Flores's family, his husband, because I think he is married, is suing Bryan Freedman and saying, you let us down, you did not look out for Travis's best interests, and we're not happy with the outcome of that lawsuit. Sure, he's not the only person that has done that. So that's Bryan Freedman. That's one thing I know about Bryan Freedman. Another thing about Bryan Freedman that happened very recently was in a hearing for his client, Vin Diesel, he practically punched the other attorney. And that was reported in the press. So what I noticed as well in this declaration is how many companies Michael Jackson actually has. So all these people that are like, he's dead, he can't defend himself. He has got attorneys working for the Michael Jackson Company, the estate of Michael Jackson, the Michael Jackson Family Trust, the estate of Michael Jackson, MJJ Productions LLC and MJJ Ventures LLC. Okay, so that's a hell of a lot of companies with representation. I have personal and first-hand knowledge of the matters set forth in this declaration, and if called upon to testify thereto, I could and would competently do so under oath. So he says, I've read all the Cascios declarations, and a number of statements in those declarations are false and fabricated. He says, in 2019, I, along with Howard Weitzman, who conveniently is now passed away, was one of the attorneys representing the estate of Michael Jackson in connection with litigation against HBO involving the broadcast of Leaving Neverland. So I looked up when Leaving Neverland came out, and it was actually in March 2019. So they were obviously doing this before it came out. In approximately the spring of 2019, Herman Weisberg, a private investigator with whom I have worked on multiple matters, informed me and Howard Weitzman that he wanted to meet with us because he had information about someone who was asserting a claim on behalf of the estate of Michael Jackson. Now, that bit doesn't add up to me either, but before I get a bit more into Howard, I wanted to let me get that chat off. I wanted to quickly share this article. I know it's on the BBC, and someone said the other day the BBC is corrupt, and I'm like, I know, but it just shows the timing of everything. Yeah, so it's Michael Jackson estate sues HBO for $100 million over Leaving Neverland film. So this was on the 22nd of February 2019. Just getting all the timeline lined up for y'all so you can all get a comprehensive picture. Michael Jackson's estate is suing HBO for $100 million, £77 million, over the controversial documentary Leaving Neverland. They claim the film, which details the singer's alleged essay of two boys, breaches a non-disparagement clause in an old contract. A complaint filed is very similar to what they're saying about the Cascios. They're like, well, this is a forced arbitration issue. So the other thing I meant to say as well is about the arbitration is obviously arbitration means that it would happen behind closed doors. Whereas if the arbitration is not enforced, which is obviously what the Cascios want, that means it has to be exposed. It's going to be public, all the information that comes out, their depositions, their exhibits, their evidence, yeah? So, I mean, think about it. Think about it, Michael Jackson fans that talk about Michael Jackson is innocent, he's being used by these people, They just want money. They're the ones that want transparency. They're fighting to have this out in the open, not the Michael Jackson companies are trying to have it behind closed doors. A complaint filed at Los Angeles Superior Court on Thursday read, Michael Jackson is innocent, period. In response, HBO said it would not only still air Dan Reed's documentary, but bring it forward by several days. I mean, that's the point. They weren't suing them for him being innocent. They were suing him because, they were suing HBO because they had used this footage from the Bucharest concert, which there was a non-disparagement clause agreement about. Yes, non-disparagement means they weren't allowed to use the footage of Michael Jackson to say anything to portray him in a negative light. Same argument they're using on the Cascios. They're like, you had a fiduciary duty to not say anything. Then they've got some other articles. Jackson estate attacks lurid documentary. Jermaine Jackson, Michael is innocent. Channel 4 rejects Jackson complaint. And it's funny because Matt Fidesz also tried to sue Channel 4 for a reality show he made with the Jacksons. I don't think I even showed that. I think I mentioned it on my deep dive into the con artists that make content about Michael Jackson, which hopefully I will be able to re-upload at a later date. HBO will move forward with the airing of Leaving Neverland. This will allow... I missed that bit. Despite the desperate lengths taken to undermine the film, our plans remain unchanged, the channel said. HBO will move forward with the airing of Leaving Neverland. This will allow everyone the opportunity to assess the film and the claims in it for themselves. The broadcaster will now screen the 4-hour documentary on 3rd and 4th March. Yeah, so he's saying, Bryan Freedman is saying that they came to him in February, I think. I think I read February. Okay, it says approximately the spring. I don't know where I got February from, but it must have been somewhere, so it will all make sense. Let me go back to the article. Okay. The film tells the stories of Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who claim to have been sexually assaulted by Michael Jackson in the 90s as children. It has been criticized a number of times by the Jackson estate since it was first screened at the Sundance Festival in January. Okay. So it had been screened in January and in spring and in... I just want to make sure I'm getting this all absolutely correct. So in 2019, I, along with Howard Weitzman, was one of the attorneys representing the estate in connection with litigation against HBO. So this HBO had started at the beginning. This litigation had started at the beginning of the year. All right, I'm clear. They called it, wait for it, an outrageous and pathetic attempt to exploit and cash in after the singer's 2009 death. It has also been criticized by individual members of Michael Jackson's family, including Jermaine Jackson, who told ITV's Good Morning Britain there was no truth to the allegations made in the film. So again, this contradicts what Michael Jackson fans say that the media is against Michael Jackson. They literally let his brothers on and his family to say it's all lies, he was innocent. They also went on the equivalent in the US, I think, USA Today or something. The legal action refers to a contract to televise a concert from Jackson's Dangerous Tour in 1992. The contract included a clause saying HBO would not make any disparaging remarks about the pop superstar. How dare you? Channel 4, which co-produced the documentary with HBO. I mean, also, that just goes to show why no one hardly anyone said anything about him when he was alive, because that was the kind of pressure they were under. And I have seen, I think I showed another clip of Mark Garagos. Mark Garagos is featured heavily in these documents. Speaking at a press conference, saying if anyone says anything, we're coming after you, because the airline that they were flying on recorded the conversation between him and Michael Jackson. And yeah, Mark Garagos shut them down. They tried to sell it. Channel 4, which co-produced the documentary with HBO, has previously rejected a complaint made by the estate, who said it broke the British Broadcasting Code. The documentary is set to be screened in the UK. Okay, so that clears up any rumours about that. The reason why it had to be removed from streaming platforms is because they proved in court it breached a non-disparagement clause. Not because anything was proven to be untrue that was shown in it. But obviously everyone's allowed their opinion and everyone's allowed their say. So this is the thing I don't get yet. If he's already suing HBO because of the documentary, it's just very interesting that up pops Herman Weisberg out of the blue, who he happens to have worked with on multiple occasions, and informs him that he wants to meet them, him and Howard, because he's got information about someone who's asserting a claim on behalf of the estate of Michael Jackson. Mr. Weisberg stated that the meeting had to be in person because the person asserting the claims refused to speak on the phone. So I just want to quickly go over Howard Wiseman again. Herman Weisberg. I get the names a bit mixed up. So it's Howard Weitzman is the deceased attorney for the Michael Jackson estate, who was working with Bryan Freedman. And then we've got Herman B. Weisberg, who is a private investigator who has this company called Sage Intelligence Group LLC, who's worked with Bryan Freedman a good few times. Well, he's also appeared on several TV shows. And so I found a few interviews and clips with him on YouTube. I'm hoping that I can play this tiny little clip because I thought it was really interesting, and that this woman is not going to give me a copyright strike because this is fair use. And it's only got 400 views. Right.
I've come across that brings any reality to what a private investigator does. Yeah, I deal with celebrities. I deal with high net worth people most of all, I deal with really smart attorneys. I deal with problems that that they have made movies about: stalking, extortion, um, internal theft, criminal defense. I do because I love that world, and I think everybody should have a shot at having someone like me assisting their attorney to find what's out there. People rush to judgment these days. There's hardly any reason for a courtroom. Sometimes people just believe the first blur about in the press. And I'm telling you, I don't talk about cases, but the stuff you haven't heard about uh, of horrible situations and positions that people were put in by other people that turned out to be not true. I'm a big believer in, don't blame the victim, believe the victim. But every once in a while, it doesn't hurt to have somebody playing the other side just to make sure that it's a fair playing field. It's extremely important to me. I don't like it.
So you hear that? He says, I'm an extreme believer in don't blame the victim.
When people rush to judgment on things, I've seen the stories that I've been involved with on the news, and then later on, I've gotten those assignments or those cases, and I say, "Wow, the media, this 24-hour news cycle that everybody's trying to feed this big black hole of information. It's dangerous." And it's fun when I win. I don't get to tell anybody about it, though. Unfortunately, I'm not going to tell anybody about it here either. It's one of those things.
So yeah, he talks a good talk, but the thing is, if you go to his LinkedIn, because I did, okay, which he only started 3 years ago. So obviously this Leaving Neverland situation was in 2019, so he didn't have LinkedIn then. But for someone that says that people rush to judge and we're living in a 24-hour news cycle and yada yada yada, Hollywood and TV isn't reality. Look at the cases that he comments on his LinkedIn. Yeah, these are things that he's been in the press doing. So we've got he's been asked to go on CBS talking about investigation raises question over treatment of Epstein's cell after his death. That's a conspiracy. Yeah, that's a conspiracy that Epstein was killed by someone. He has gone on CBS talking about it. Nothing to do with him. I don't think he was involved in the investigation. He's just giving his comments. Charlie Kirk, obviously one of the hugest stories of last year. So viral, although now that the killer's on trial, no one is interested at all. Doing a talk on the police in movies. That's the podcast I just showed. Wait a second, there's something else that's not here. I guess it must be on YouTube. He's done commentary about the Nancy Guthrie case. I'm like, the Idaho, that Bryan Koberger guy, another case that went completely viral. He's done video commentary about that. Yeah, he's definitely doing a lot of this kind of stuff. So this was a TV show he made, 48 Hours. He tracked down this woman apparently by looking at the reflection in her son, by looking at her Facebook page. That's what he says. Then there's this one where he's saying about, that was about young boys getting sextorted. And then Oh, yeah, there it is. Look, Idaho murder victim families should not hire private investigators yet. Don't know what that is. Virtual kidnappings. Sextortion attacks on the rich and famous are on the rise. Here's how their lawyers are fighting back. Yeah, this is the narratives he's putting out. I think there was another one. There was another one during COVID where he was like, there it is. Look, New York wealthiest hiring armed guards fearing coronavirus doomsday. This is in the Mail. This is who he's effing with. I'm just saying. I'm just thinking he's a bit of a hypocrite. Oh God, not panic rooms. Anyway, Mail again. Sun newspaper, really? Meet the Mistress Whisperer. I think I might have gone over that on the last live I did talking about him, but this is just a little bit more. Yeah, so that's him. So let's go back to the declaration of Bryan Freedman now that we know who he's talking about. So, yeah, he's saying that Herman Weisberg just popped out the blue and said, oh, I just happen to have this client that I can't tell you who it is, but he wants to have a meeting with you where you've got to strip down to your swimwear. I'm just asking if you think this sounds credible. Contrary to what is alleged in the declarations by Frank Cassio and his siblings, Edward Cassio, Dominic Cassio Jr., Mary Nicole Port, and Aldo Cassio, it was not Mr. Weitzman and me who initiated contact with the Cassios in 2019. It was Mr. Weisberg who first contacted me and Mr. Weitzman to inform us that someone was asserting claims against the estate of Michael Jackson. Prior to meeting in person, Mr. Weisberg never disclosed to Mr. Weitzman or me the identity of the person asserting claims against the estate of Michael Jackson. So according to him, Frank Cassio has tracked down this guy to set up this meeting. I mean, very coincidental. At Mr. Weisberg's request and pursuant to Mr. Weitzman's direction in June 2019, I agreed to meet with Mr. Weisberg and the unnamed individual asserting claims against the estate at the Sunset Marquis Hotel in West Hollywood. Although Mr. Weisberg requested that Mr. Weitzman also attend the meeting, he was unavailable to do so. Therefore, pursuant to Mr. Weitzman's direction, I agreed to meet with Mr. Weisberg and the Sunset Marquis Hotel in June 2019 without Mr. Weitzman present. When I arrived at the Sunset Marquis Hotel, Mr. Weisberg introduced me for the first time to Frank Cassio, the individual alleging claims against the estate of Michael Jackson. The only individuals present at the meeting in the Sunset Marquis were Frank Cassio, just taking a sip of water, Herman Weisberg, and me. When Frank Cassio learned that Mr. Weitzman was unavailable to meet that day at the Sunset Marquis Hotel, he was furious. Prior to meeting with Mr. Weisberg and Frank Cassio at the Sunset Marquis Hotel, Mr. Weisberg instructed me to bring a bathing suit to the meeting. I just go, this honestly sounds like a Martin Scorsese movie. I was informed that the individual we were meeting with, i.e. Frank Cassio, whose identity was unknown to me and Mr. Weitzman prior to the meeting, was concerned that he would be recorded. Therefore, Frank Cassio and Herman Weisberg would only speak to me in the swimming pool area at the Sunset Marquis with me wearing a bathing suit, so that Frank Cassio could be sure that I was not wearing a wire It sounds like he doesn't trust him at all. During the meeting with Frank Cassio and Mr. Weisberg in the swimming pool area at the Sunset Marquis Hotel in June of 2019, Frank Cassio informed me that Michael Jackson had allegedly engaged in inappropriate conduct with all of his siblings. Frank stated that he was never subject to inappropriate conduct, but he unequivocally stated that his siblings had been abused by Michael Jackson and that the Cassio family intended to assert claims against the estate of Michael Jackson. During that meeting, Frank was insistent that he and his family were going to do something and seek money from the estate. Frank Cassio told me that he and his family members wanted a large amount of money to resolve their alleged claims, or that they would go public with their claims, which Frank Cassio stated Mr. Weitzman and other representatives of the estate of Michael Jackson would not like. After meeting with Frank Cassio and Mr. Weisberg at the Sunset Marquis swimming pool in June 2019, I immediately notified Howard Weitzman of the meeting and informed him that Frank Cassio had asserted a claim that Michael Jackson engaged in inappropriate conduct with Frank Cassio's siblings. Thereafter, Mr. Weitzman and I met with and interviewed each of the Cassios individually, including Frank Cassio, Edward Cassio, Dominic Cassio Jr., Mary Nicole Port, and Aldo Cassio. Each of them indicated during those interviews that they had alleged SA claims they intended to assert. Although we did not believe that the Cassios' alleged claims had merit, not that they didn't believe them, they didn't believe they had merit. The representatives of the estate of Michael Jackson reluctantly agreed. This just literally makes so little sense. We did not believe that the Cassios' alleged claims had merit, but we have reluctantly agreed that we were going to pay them. We reluctantly agreed that the Michael Jackson Company, LLC, would enter into a confidential acquisition and consulting agreement dated on or about January 10th, 2020, with the Cassio family members. Pursuant to the agreement, plaintiffs and the other parties to the agreement were paid over a period of 6 years in order to prevent Michael's family, this is a talking point I've seen in comments, from having to be subjected to any further false allegations against Michael, and to protect future projects important to Michael's legacy. Yeah. The statements in the declarations of the Cassios that they never demanded money from the estate of Michael Jackson in 2019 are absolutely false. Frank Cassio led the negotiation of the agreement on behalf of the other Cassio family members in 2019. During the course of the negotiations, after Frank Cassio demanded many millions of dollars, the estate initially offered the Cassio siblings $100,000 each to resolve their alleged claims against the estate of Michael Jackson. This just doesn't make any sense. If they thought they had no merit, why did they not just say, fine, sue us then? It's going to be dismissed. Doesn't make sense. On behalf of the Cassios, Frank Cassio, which is why I asked the question in my video, on behalf of the Cassios, in the comments of my video, sorry. On behalf of the Cassios, Frank Cassio demanded to be paid significantly more than $100,000. I recall multiple conversations with Frank Cassio in 2019 in which he raised his voice to Mr. Weitzman and me and made threats against the estate unless the estate agreed to pay them more money. He raised his voice. This is someone who nearly punched someone at a hearing. Frank further threatened that money need to be paid to him and his family members fast. Otherwise, they would all go public with their claims. I mean, just to sort of butt in here for a minute, it has taken 13 years for Wade Robson and James Safechuck's case to get to trial. I don't blame him for feeling like he wants a speedy resolution, if that's what he was being promised. Ultimately, after lengthy negotiations with Frank Cassio, it was agreed that MJC would pay each of the plaintiffs a significantly greater amount of money in installments payable over a 6-year period. So he really wants us to believe that Frank Cassio was was able to bargain them into paying his whole family all of this money single-handedly. At Frank Cassio's direction, the agreement further provided that 6% of each of the payments to each of the Cassios would be paid directly to the Cassio's representatives Herman Weisberg and Ken Katz. Herman Weisberg is now his representative? I don't know who Ken Katz is. Although the original agreement with the Cassios provided that they would receive 6 annual payments of a specific amount starting January 1st, 2020, at the request of Mary Nicole Port and her husband James Port, the agreement was amended as of January 28th, 2020, to provide for significantly larger initial payment, less the 6% payment to Weisberg and Katz, followed by 5 additional smaller payments. Frank Cass, if it was this easy to get money out of them, surely a lot more people would be doing it by now. Frank Cassio, at the request of Mary Nicole Port, requested a larger payment up front so that Mary Nicole and her husband could make a down payment on a house they wanted to purchase. Frank Cassio requested that he and his other siblings also be paid additional monies up front, such they would each be receiving a significantly larger initial payment than was provided for under the agreement. At no time did I ever state that the Cassios should not hire an attorney. My understanding was that the Cassios were being represented by Ken Katz, a highly respected talent manager. And I was told by Mr. Weitzman that the Cassios had a tax lawyer. If the Cassios did not hire an attorney, it was their choice whether to do so. I mean, again, a talent agent would 100%, if they were entering into any kind of contract or agreement, legally have to say, you need to get a lawyer to look at this. If the Cassios did not hire an attorney, it was their choice whether to do so. Sorry, I just read that. The statement in the declaration of Frank Cassio, Edward Cassio, Dominic Cassio, Marie Nicole, and Aldo, that in April 2024, Howard Weisberg and I contacted them unsolicited and told them that the estate of Michael Jackson wanted to pay them more money than they were entitled to receive under the agreement is absolutely false. In or about April 2024, Herman Weisberg, is it Weisberg or Wessyberg? Or no. Oh, maybe that's a typo because it's Weisberg there. Wessyberg. Wessyberg informed me that he had been contacted by Frank Cassio and that Frank Cassio was upset that he and his family did not receive enough money under the agreement. Mr. Weisberg called me. I mean, this is something I have heard from a lot of different victims, particularly in the Jeffrey Epstein case, for example. That when it comes to the actual amount they receive, a lot of it is taken up with expenses and lawyer fees. And then there's lawyers like who I've mentioned before, Tony Busby and Tom Girardi, who kept their clients' money and said they'd put it into trusts for them. They never even got their settlements. Mr. Weisberg called me and then patched Frank Cassio into the call. That sounds very casual. Although the Cascios still had a final payment due to them under the agreement a year later in a phone call, Frank Cassio screamed at me and said that the money he and his siblings received under the agreement was not enough. During one phone call, listen, this bit's really interesting. During one phone call with Frank Cassio, when he was screaming that he did not get enough money, Frank made threatening and highly offensive statements concerning my son. So I terminated the call. Now, I'm pretty sure that Spencer is one of his sons, and I forget the other one. I think he might have 3 sons, but 2 of them, I think, actually work with him. I think they work, one of them has a clipping company, which is very interesting. Oh. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But this is not the first time Bryan Freedman's sons have come up in conversations where people are very angry. Bryan Freedman doesn't just get angry with people. He makes people very angry. Is the experience I've seen of things I've read and seen about him, which has been a lot because I've been looking into him for the last year and a half, coming up for 2 years. I declare under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California and the United States of America that the foregoing is true and correct. Executed this 21st day of May 26th. Los Angeles, California. Okay. So then we've got Martin Singer. So this is a much shorter one, I think. I'm not going to read all of it, but basically he says that on the 23rd of September, the Cassio party's attorney, 2024, Howard King sent a letter which he labelled a notice of default of the confidential acquisition and consulting agreement that had been entered into by the Michael Jackson Company, LLC, with plaintiffs and others, including plaintiff's brother, Frank Cassio. In that letter, Mr. King stated that his clients, the Cassios, had revealed in 2019 that they had been molested by Michael Jackson for decades. A true and correct copy of that September 23, 24 letter is attached here too as Exhibit 7. So here it says, on or about October 6th, 2025, Frank Cassio's then attorney, Mark Geragos, who stood outside the courtroom and said, what I love about being an attorney is I can lie in court and nothing happens, and that the estate had covered up and lied about Michael Jackson for years. That was what he said. Filed in the Los Angeles Superior Court, a memorandum of points and authorities in opposition to petition to compel arbitration and request for stay pending arbitration. Yeah, so that's what they were disputing in the documents I was reading in the last lawsuit live stream. In the opposition papers, Attorney Garagos made the judicial admission that the agreement had been entered into in 2019 to resolve the Cascios' sexual abuse claims, stating as follows. The specific object driving this provision and the agreement generally was petitioners' desire to prevent respondents from disclosing their sexual abuse as minors by Michael Jackson. The agreement was executed solely to resolve all such claims. The plain text of its confidentiality provision broadly prevents respondents from disclosing anything relating to the agreement's existence terms and subject matter, namely the abuse. In or about June 2019, so that's a long time after the documentary was aired, plaintiffs told Freedman and Weitzman explicit details about Jackson's abuse. So that must have been when they met at the swimming pool. The Cascios further allege in their USDC complaint in this action that after they informed the estate's attorneys, Freedman and Weitzman, the explicit details, the attorneys responded by promising to send a settlement agreement to compensate them for the pain and suffering they had claimed. This has been going on since 2025. Freedman and Weitzman promised to send the family a settlement agreement that would properly compensate them for their pain and suffering, in addition to foregoing judicial admissions to the effect that the Cascios had communicated their claims of alleged abuse. When the film Leaving Neverland was released in 2019, the Cascios allegedly became conscious that they had been abused and that it had severely damaged them. Leaving Neverland deprogrammed plaintiffs and forced them for the first time to become conscious of the reality. Jackson's abuse was wrong and had severely damaged them. Okay, so they've since gone on a public international TV show and explained how they came to that conclusion. So he's arguing all this, right? I don't really want to read all of it, but I just wanted to remind anyone who didn't see the last episode where I did a little bit more of a deep dive into Martin Singer and how he's always used the same argument, and the kind of people that he's represented previously. But that's what he's saying. All right. So now let's get to the exciting part. So June 8th was where I was up to in the last reading. Then we had June 9th. So then now we're up to Sir reply. We've got a ruling by Judge Herman saying the court has reviewed plaintiff Mary Nicole Port's request to file a Sir reply. The court finds that good cause has been shown, and on that basis grants the request to file the Sir reply and attendant declarations. However, the court denies the request for an evidentiary hearing. There is no PDF document associated with this entry, text-only entry. Oh, okay. So that looks like a technical malfunction. Now we get a new filing from Edward Cassio on June 9th. Yeah, so this was the day after I did my read through. And then on June 10th, we've got a request for leave to file response for a Sir reply, and plaintiff's opposition to Jackson Party's request to file a Sir reply. It's like a new bit of terminology every day, but this is the interesting bit. So this is Edward Cassio, Dominic Cassio, Mary Nicole Port, that's her married name, and Aldo Cassio versus all the Michael Jackson companies, yeah? So it says here, background, the Jackson Party's motion failed to mention the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault, Sexual Harassment Act of 2021, the EFAA. So that was what I was going over. And also looked up that legislation changed in 2024. In their reply, the Jackson parties addressed the EFAA for the first time. They contested whether the dispute arose between the parties in 2019 and whether the EFAA applies to this case. So obviously, the Jackson parties want there to be enforced arbitration, meaning it has to be done behind closed doors. But the Cascios lawyers are saying this is now a dispute about SA and SH. Therefore, it's not going to be enforced. Arbitration cannot be enforced. To support their new arguments, they attached a supplemental declaration by Martin Singer. So that's what I just read out, who is counsel for the Jackson parties, and Bryan Freedman, who is counsel for the estate of Michael Jackson. Singer's supplemental declaration consists of blatantly out of context quotes made by plaintiffs and their counsel in filings and correspondence. I mean, he is basing it on hearsay. Freedman supplies new lengthy testimony relevant to the parties' arguments concerning the dispute arises, timing clause, and whether the agreement is a pre-dispute arbitration argument. Defendant improperly construct the plain text and orderly meaning of the EFAA. So then they're arguing about the meaning and its proper use, yeah? Defendants point out that the victims in, I guess this is another case, were sexually assaulted after they signed arbitration agreements, yet defendants failed to address any of the cases cited in plaintiffs' opposition that make clear that the EFAA contained no limitation concerning when the SA was committed. Third, defendants skip over the EFAA's term involving sexual assault by pointing to the pro-arbitration principles, yeah? Finally, defendants misrepresent plaintiffs' argument that a SA dispute is formed by facts, not claims. This is not an argument that plaintiffs came up with. This is what courts have concluded when construing the phrase SA dispute. This is really, really similar to what is happening in the Blake Lively situation. Defendants disagree with the case law, they should address it. If the defendants disagree with the case law, they should address it. It is telling that they have failed to do so. B, defendants have failed to show that the dispute between the parties arose before 2024. Freedman's declaration. Citing Freedman's declaration, defendants contested that the estate's interactions with plaintiff's brother non-party Frank Cassio, and to a much more limited degree, plaintiffs demonstrate that a dispute arose between the parties in 2019. Defendants are wrong. Plaintiffs have submitted supplemental declarations made by themselves, Frank, their mother, Concetta Cassio, and Mary Nicole's husband, James Paul, that contest Freedman's false testimony about their relationship and contacts with defendants, Freedman and the now deceased Howard Weitzman, another attorney for the estate. In 2019 and 2020, and in 2024, when the dispute actually arose between the parties. Freedman's declaration is rife with misrepresentations. Here are some key falsehoods and omissions. Okay, so this is their side. First, Freedman fails to acknowledge in his declaration that he represented Eddie and James as their attorney from 2014 to 2022 in connection with a class action lawsuit concerning posthumous Michael Jackson records. Records matter. To be clear, Eddie and Marie Nicole's husband had an attorney-client relationship with Freedman in 2019 and 2020, the period that Freedman facilitated plaintiffs entering into the agreement with MJC. Not heard anything about this. The estate agreed to pay for all of Eddie's and James' attorneys' fees and costs, and the estate recommended that they retain Freedman. Eddie and James signed a conflict waiver as to each other, but not as to any of defendants. All of this led plaintiffs to believe Freedman was advocating for their interests in 2019 and 2020, and why plaintiffs had no reason to believe that they were adverse to any of defendants during that period. Okay? So, I went to what I consider to be quite a reliable source, because I have read bits and pieces about this fake album, and I've seen a few videos about it on YouTube, but like I said, it was one of the first things to come up in the comments. This is the astroturfing. This is how the astroturfing works. This is from this website, NPR, yeah, and it's August 27th, 2018. Way before anyone knew anything about Leaving Neverland. Michael Jackson waves to photographers during a 1996 press conference in Paris, the first posthumous album by the King of Pop, who died in 2009, has been trailed by controversy since its 2010 release. Updated August 28th at 3:07 p.m. So there's a lyric from Breaking News, which I think is one of the tracks on this album. Oh, let me just show you the artwork as well. Yeah, this is the artwork for that album that came out in 2009. It did not do very well. So one of the lyrics from Breaking News is, they want to see that I fail. They want to see that I fall because I'm Michael Jackson. And I'm like, I was thinking about this earlier. I don't think people wanted to see Michael Jackson fall. I think the opposite of that is true. Like, everyone wanted him to get back to being the amazing performer that he once was. Like I said earlier, everyone was trying to get him off the drugs, trying to get him back to performing, trying to get him back to making good music again. But he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to cooperate. There's so many stories from people that worked with him saying he just didn't turn up on the set. He didn't turn up for this. He didn't turn up for that. He just wanted to hang out with young boys all the time. He was drunk. He was on pills. You know, it was all there. It was all put out there. It's just people just didn't want to take it on board. 1 month before the December 10 2010 release of Michael, the first album released after the King of Pop's death in 2009, Michael Jackson's family was very publicly raising doubts about whether 3 songs on the album had actually been performed by him. I tried so hard to prevent this craziness, but they wouldn't listen. Jackson's nephew Terrell tweeted, "It doesn't sound like him," Jackson's sister Latoya said at the time. I mean, the other thing is, like, I don't think he had the same voice that he had before by that time, because he was not taking care of himself. I'm not just going to say that. It's a controversy that die-hard fans have kept their eyes on for nearly a decade, and which has re-entered news feeds after arguments were heard last week in a long-running court case over it. Another court case. So, the 3 songs allegedly sung by someone other than Jackson, Breaking News, Monster, and Keep Your Head Up, were ostensibly recorded in New Jersey in 2007, where the pop star, working alongside credited co-writers Edward Cassio and James Reportedly, Jackson and his family were living in the house of Cassio's father at the time and made the tracks at Cassio's home studio. Well, we know that's true now. After Jackson's death, Sony Music and Epic Records then packaged those tracks along with 6 other unreleased songs of undisputed authenticity into Michael, an album which peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200, a relatively low showing for the King of Pop. Casio and Sony Music have long maintained the track's authenticity, while the Jackson estate dispatched attorney Howard Weitzman to allay suspicions just ahead of the album's 2010 release. The other thing is about this article that I'm noticing is that it was only Eddie Cassio and Mary Nicole's husband that were implicated in this. But the people in the comments make it sound like it's the whole family. In 2012, 2 British men were arrested for hacking into a Sony network and making off with Jackson's entire music catalogue. A $253 million heist. I don't even remember this. They later pleaded guilty and were given no jail time. A few years later, you may remember, the company would be recovering from a far more damning technological snafu. According to a report from The Guardian, the pair undertook the infiltration with the goal of verifying whether Jackson had actually sung on his posthumous song. Really? Then in 2014, Jackson fan Vera Sarova sued Casio, Porte, Sony Music, Jackson Estate co-executive John Branca, MJJ Productions, the estate's music arm, and Angelicson Productions, Casio's production company. Sarova accused them all of essentially selling her and others a product that had been misrepresented. Separately, she accused Port Cassio and Angelicson of fraud. So this is the source of all these fraud conspiracy theories, yeah? 2014. Last week, on October 21, arguments were heard in an appeal that has put Sarova's main case on hold. The appeal centers on the question of whether Sony Music and the Jackson estate are liable for misrepresenting the contents of the album to consumers by depicting Jackson on its cover and by promoting the album's release in a YouTube video. To make the case that they should be removed from Sarova's putative class action, both Sony Music and Jackson's estate hypothetically admitted that the songs were not sung by the late legend. You see how this works? The estate were liable. The estate were liable for misrepresenting the contents of the album, not the people who produced the music. But who was attacked? The people who produced the music, Teddy Riley and the Cascios. We have conceded for purposes of this motion, solely for purposes of this motion, that Michael Jackson did not sing the vocals on those 3 songs. I think he did. Having heard them. Zia Modaver, the lawyer representing Sony Music and the Jackson estate, explained in oral arguments obtained by NPR. But they have alleged and are stuck for all purposes with the fact that the Angelicsson, the production company of Edward Cassio defendants, not us, were solely and exclusively in possession of knowledge about who actually sang them. After attending last week's hearing, a person tweeting under the name of Truth Untold drew renewed attention to the controversy after writing several posts on the hearing that were widely interpreted as a smoking gun as to the track's inauthenticity. Now, this is where I'm like, this is uncanny, yeah? So this is the account that they're talking about. And just bear in mind, yeah, Bryan Freedman has been doing this social media astroturfing smear campaign stuff for a long time as part of his litigation processes. Talking about sextortion, that is literally what he does. So yeah, there's this account called Faking Michael Podcast on Twitter. This was the post that they referenced in that article that it said hashtag Cassio case update. Lawyers for Vera Sarova and Sony Music attended court today re Cassio track / Michael album case. Each side argued as to why the wording on the album cover and in TV commercials should or should not be considered commercial speech. Hashtag remove Cassio tracks now. Okay, so I just want to show you the whole account. Joined August 2013. It's a podcast as well. Episode 1, breaking news. 2, the aftermath. 3, Weitzman's statement. Meet the family. Yeah? So, look, does this look familiar to you? ahead of its time, one might say. In case you missed it, our true crime podcast series, Faking Michael, the inside story of music's greatest fraud, is out now. This is on October 14th, 2024. Spotify, available on Spotify and Apple. Spread the word by rating, reviewing, and sharing. Let me see if I can quickly play. I can see Oprah Winfrey there.
News is the controversy surrounding the release of a new Michael Jackson album titled Michael.
This is one of the most controversial music projects ever.
The album many Michael Jackson fans have been waiting for, Michael hit store shelves today.
With 10 never-before-heard songs recorded before his death.
Producer Eddie Cascios says Michael recorded some of the songs in Cascios' home studio.
He recorded right there in my basement.
But diehard fans aren't buying what Cassio has to say.
I just listened to Breaking News, the new Michael Jackson song.
A lot of controversy about this song, and I don't think it's him. I really don't.
Everybody, all the fans, everybody's saying that they don't believe it's Michael.
This song is fake.
That's not Michael's voice.
It doesn't even sound like MJ.
It's not even his voice.
I'm flabbergasted.
It's definitely not Michael Jackson, I guarantee you.
That's not Michael. They can't bullshit me, man. That's not Michael's voice.
That ain't no Michael Jackson.
He does not sound like that.
Controversy is already swirling around the new Michael Jackson CD. Is the pop icon singing on every track?
People are out there trying to decide, is this Michael or is this not Michael?
I can tell you that it is Michael's voice.
Why do you say for sure it is him?
Because you can hear the authenticity in his voice.
Sony's Epic Records guarantees the album's authenticity.
We picked a side. We said it's Michael.
But according to TMZ, Jackson's family says the tracks are fakes, sung by a Michael.
Not TMZ. Not Bryan Freedman's bestie, TMZ.
impersonator.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? This is just Friedman's playbook. Anyway, as I said, Sony had to protect they were liable. The Michael Jackson estate was liable, yeah? So they had to protect their interests. So I think that's pretty significant. What better way to make someone the scapegoat than have a social media troll account to do all the work, to do all the heavy lifting, to do all the public opinion swaying. Okay, so there was this as well, which was, so it was this guy called Damian Shields that was behind this true crime podcast. So this is Eddie Cassio up here. Anyway. It's just wild how the family are just wheeled out at any opportunity where they have to defend their vested interest. Because if you notice, that's what every single one of the disputes with the estate is about. It's like, you've gone against the vested interests of the Michael Jackson companies. Anyway, that was the Twitter person, Truth Untold, yeah. The truth is less clear-cut. This is back to the article, back to reality. The truth is less clear-cut. Sony Music and the estate were in the midst of making a more specific argument that the album's cover art and a video published ahead of its release are both First Amendment speech, not commercial speech. How the appeals court judges rule on that notion will determine whether the accused parties are liable for misrepresenting the album's contents to consumers. The thing people don't seem to appreciate as well, that have called the Cascios frauds, is in terms of like a contract they would have had for selling this album, that all would have been done and dusted way before any of this came to light. Like, that woman sued them after the album was released. and it had been sold. So that's not going to affect whether they got paid or not. The particular statement being complained of in our case in that video ad, I feel like the argument is that they fooled the estate and Sony Records into believing it was a fake album. Like, that's what the people in the comments, I think, believe. The particular statement being complained of in our case in that video ad, Modabba continued, referencing the YouTube promo, is it says that this is an album from the greatest musical entertainer of all time, from Michael Jackson. Well, it is an album and it's really his estate. Well, it is an album from his estate, okay? The other point I would make about the video ad is that for somebody to say that they heard here's an album from Michael Jackson and they translate that into every vocal on all of the songs were sung by Michael Jackson, that is not a reasonable interpretation. I would imagine that they didn't have enough material and so they had to be very creative. That's what I heard Teddy Riley saying. He was like, he sampled his voice and made it into ad-libs in order to make a complete finished product, because it wasn't a finished album when he died. Driving the point home in a statement given to NPR on August 24th, Modabba wrote, "No one has conceded that Michael Jackson did not sing on the songs." Let's just highlight that. The hearing Tuesday was about whether the First Amendment protects Sony Music and the estate, and there has been no ruling on the issue of whose voice is on the recordings. On Tuesday, August 28th, the three appeals court judges ruled in Sony Music and the Jacksons' estate's favor in their appeal, effectively erasing their names from Sarova's case going forward. Congrats. The judges found that because they did not know for certain that it was Jackson singing on the three disputed songs, the album's cover and the promotional YouTube video were not strictly commercial speech, and so not eligible for the two charges Sarova attempted to bring against them. Because Sony Music, MJJ Productions, and the Jackson estate lacked actual knowledge of the identity of the lead singer on Breaking News Monster and Keep Your Head Up, they could only draw a conclusion about that issue from their own research and the available evidence. Under these circumstances, Sony Music, MJJ Productions, and the Jackson estate's representations about the identity of the singer amounted to a statement of opinion rather than fact. Sarova's case against Angelicson's Productions, Edward Cassio, and James Port will continue. So that explains a lot. And also it explains why they went on Oprah Winfrey, because I didn't know that they went on Oprah Winfrey because of that album being released. So I can only imagine that it was the estate's idea to put that album out. I'm just saying. Because they knew they could make money out of it. And I guess they thought having the whole family on Oprah Winfrey would be a good way to promote it, because everyone wants to know what was Michael Jackson really like. So obviously when she asked them questions about whether he did anything to them, they're not going to say anything on that program, are they? So that would not be the time for that. Even if they had admitted it to themselves or each other, which I'm pretty sure they hadn't, because I believe them that they thought the abuse had only happened to them and that they had been conditioned by Michael Jackson into thinking that they should never speak to anyone about it because they would be in serious trouble, probably ending up in jail. So yeah, this is all making a lot more sense to me. Right, so let's get back to this lawsuit now. But yeah, knowing that Bryan Freedman was representing them in that case, and then he says, I never met Frank Cassio before. I didn't know who it was. It just doesn't sound believable. Okay, second, Freedman attests that plaintiffs were represented by a tax attorney and the talent manager, Ken Katz. Oh, okay, so that must have been their agent. This is untrue. Well, I mean, as someone who's had an agent, the agents will not let you sign a contract without the agency lawyer looking it over, and that's something they can bill you for as well. So it doubly doesn't make sense. This is untrue. Frank declaration. Third, Freedman attests that in 2019 and 2020, plaintiffs initiated contact with the estate, demanded payment from the estate, and negotiated the terms of the payments and increased payments from the estate. None of this is true. Fourth, Freedman testifies that he never told plaintiffs not to hire an attorney. This is not true. Fifth, Freedman attests that Weitzman and he did not believe the Cascios' alleged claims had merit. The evidence demonstrates otherwise. Freedman and Weitzman told Frank that Jackson had sexually abused others, including another girl. Wow. Wow. In 2019, Freedman told Mary Nicole that her story was particularly compelling because others had witnessed Jackson essaying her. I said that. I said if you go back and look at the 2005 deposition or testimony of Gavin Arvizo's brother, Star Arvizo, he was like 10 years old. He said that he witnessed Michael Jackson making inappropriate sexual comments in front of Mary Nicole and that she had drunk alcohol out of the minibar because of Michael Jackson. In 2019, Freedman said the same to Frank and James in 2024. He even referred to Mary Nicole as extremely believable and a beautiful woman inside and out. Freedman and Weitzman got emotional and consoled plaintiffs and their family members as they described the impact Jackson's essay has had on their family. This is quite something to make up. Freedman and Weitzman paid for Aldo's therapist and treatment for depression and trauma in 2019. In 2024, I'm imagining they've got receipts for that. In 2024, Freedman reached out to the Cascios and offered to represent them. Also, in 2024, Freedman told James and Frank that Weitzman had told Branca that he believed that Jackson had SA'd plaintiffs. The evidence overwhelmingly shows that Freedman, Weitzman, and all of the defendants believed that Jackson had SA'd plaintiffs when they were children. Even if taken as true, Freedman's declaration does not show that a dispute between plaintiffs and any of defendants existed in 2019. As I said, the fact that he said he thought the claims didn't have any merit, why on earth would he then give them money? Freedman's declaration contains lengthy testimony about his interactions with Frank in 2019. But Frank is not a party to this case. As to plaintiffs, Freedman testifies only that when the now deceased Howard Weitzman and he interviewed each of plaintiffs, each of them indicated during those interviews that they had alleged SA claims they intended to assert. The court must disregard Freedman's vague, conclusory, fact deficient, self-serving, single sentence testimony about his interactions with plaintiffs. I definitely think the bit about his son is self-serving. Moreover, defendants have at most shown that there was a dispute with MJC in 2019. They have not shown that any dispute arose with any of the other Jackson parties before 2024, nor have defendants provided any evidence that a dispute arose with Weisberg before 2024. Regardless, as plaintiffs have requested, this court should hold an evidentiary hearing on the issue of when the dispute arose before deciding the motion. Singer's declaration. Citing Singer's supplemental declaration, defendants contend that plaintiffs and their counsel's prior statements in a letter by plaintiff's counsel, a court filing in the Los Angeles court, and the complaint in this case constitute judicial admissions and evidence that the dispute arose in 2019 before the agreement was signed. Defendants are wrong. Judicial admissions are formal admissions in the pleadings which have the effect of withdrawing a fact from issue and dispensing wholly with the need for proof of the fact. They are generally unambiguous affirmative statements made by counsel in the context of litigation and commonly arise by way of stipulations, pleadings, statements in pretrial orders, and responses to requests for admissions. Some degree of formality is entailed. Crucially, judicial admissions are binding only in the specific lawsuit in which the party makes them. Here, none of the statements identified in Singer's declaration constitutes a judicial admission. Moreover, none of the statements demonstrate that a dispute arose before 2024. This does seem like a very well-worded document, I've got to say. First, Singer attests that counsel for plaintiffs Howard King wrote in a 2024 letter that the Cascios had revealed in 2019 that they had been molested by Michael Jackson for decades and that plaintiffs alleged the same in their complaint. A letter is not a formal admission in a pleading. I mean, it's like they're literally having to tell them the law. Nor is this evidence that a dispute arose in 2019. To reiterate, a dispute arises when an injured party registers disagreement by sending a demand letter, files an administrative charge, requests arbitration, or commences lawsuit, and the other party expressly or constructively opposes that position. No one disputes that in 2019, plaintiffs told the estate that Jackson SA'd them, but relaying such information does not constitute a formal register of disagreement absent a demand letter or the initiation of a legal action. Nor is this evidence that any defendants opposed any position of plaintiffs. Second, Singer mischaracterizes an out-of-context quote from a Los Angeles Superior Court proceeding that involves Frank but none of plaintiffs. As explained in the opposition, Branca, McLean, and MJC filed a petition for order compelling arbitration against Frank in 2025. Statements made by Frank's then attorney, Mark Geragos, in these separate proceedings do not constitute judicial admissions in the present matter. Okay, so now it makes sense why Mark Geragos was involved, and now it's Howard King. I get it now. Notably, Geragos no longer represents Frank or any of plaintiffs. Third, Singer points to allegations in plaintiff's complaint that in 2019, Freedman and Weitzman promised to send the family a settlement agreement that would properly compensate them for their pain and suffering. The Cascios became conscious of the sexual abuse when Leaving Neverland was released in 2019. This adds up with the timeline. Their story adds up with the timeline. Bryan Freedman's does not. Frank asked the estate to pay plaintiffs more money. None of this is evidence that plaintiffs formally registered disagreement with defendants or that defendants assumed an opposing position. Conclusion: this court must deny the Jackson party's motion. Signed, Howard E. King. Heather Pickerel has done a declaration as well. So these are all declarations to go with that document. And then, like I said, there's a request for leave to file a response by the defendants. And then an opposition to that. So it's like tit for tat right now. But anyway, I think that was all I was going to show for tonight. Let me just double check. Yeah, I think I've been through everything. So yeah, I do actually have more information because I was looking through my notes or where I keep all my research, and I actually found months ago, I found this stuff about Michael Jackson when he was in the Middle East with this guy who's like literally Jeffrey Epstein's bestie. Like, there's no doubt. This guy could not say he did not know what Michael Jackson was getting, what Jeffrey Epstein was getting up to. Sorry. He's literally pictured with girls so many times in Paris, in the island house, in the kitchen. And on so many of the emails. And also there was another Epstein file that I was reading that I had kind of forgotten about, where it's like a 14-year-old girl testified, or she wrote a declaration that, and it's in an FBI file, that she was at Epstein's house and he put her on the phone to Michael Jackson. So that could be for another episode. I can show the FBI, because it's another astroturfing point that I see a lot in the comments. The FBI did a 10-year investigation and found nothing. That is not true. There's also a lot more to show that Michael Jackson had the same friends as Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. I'm going to leave it there for now. I hope that you all found that as interesting as I did. And I definitely think a lot more people should be looking at this lawsuit and reporting on it. I don't know. Well, I do know why they're not, but we'll see if they catch on or not. Take care for now, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.